So today, the topic on Tea and Tarot, because it is all about divination, is runes. This is one of my favorite topics when it comes to divination, because I started out learning divination by using the runes, and it has been an extensive area of study for me. So I'm hoping that we have a lot of people who are interested in that and who will have questions for me, because questions fuel the conversation, and I want to be able to touch on any topics that any of y'all are interested in. So runes. The runes are similar to tarot in that it is a divination system, a way for us to take a look at the energies surrounding a person, the path that they are on, and how that they can positively influence and create their own future. A lot of people, when they're tuning in and looking at divination, we see a lot of different things in movies and on television that is sensationalized bullshit. Anyone who reads tarot is aware of that as a fact and as a topic. That there's definitely a lot of strange and interesting things that they do in movies to try to make people frightened, and they look from a perspective of your future being predestined, so that you don't actually have any means of affecting it. So you get a reading, you're told what is going to happen, and then you live that out. Divination would be completely and utterly pointless if that were actually the case. However, because every choice, every decision that we make creates our future, we can then look at the path that we're on, what we have created, and figure out where that's taking us, and if we actually want to go in that direction. If so, continue your path, continue doing what you're doing. However, tarot and runes and other forms of divination actually give us hope that we can create a better future, or actually affect our future in a positive manner. And we do this by taking a look at those choices and decisions and deciding what path is correct for us and how to affect that. And the cards, the stones, the rune pieces or bones or whatever oracles that you use will essentially tell you how to affect that space. We have free will, and that's a beautiful thing. However, most people are reactionary. We react to stimulus that is placed in front of us, and those reactions are very predictable. Yet if we do things differently, if we decide to make different choices, then we are capable of altering the course that we are on. That being said, the runes are a system of looking at those choices, a system of consulting with spirit and finding which direction we actually want to go and affecting our world in that way. So tarot has been it's sort of pervasive throughout the world, and the symbols that are in the tarot are very much a part of the collective unconscious, the subconscious self. And so the symbolism actually crosses so many different cultures. The Norse runes, I work specifically with the Elder Futhark. It is, I feel, the only version of the Norse runes that are worth actually, that are essentially core to this practice. So the Elder Futhark allows us to look into that space within a purely Norse Viking idea of the world. Having studied the runes for so many years and worked with them for so many years, it is absolutely essential on my path to study the culture, And I already have a question. Yay! What are your thoughts on the strong belief in fate in Norse paganism in relationship to what you just described as free will? That's a really good question. So much of what we have come to understand as part of the Norse culture has been carried through a very Christian lens. The people who conquered the Norse were Christian, and they translated all of the mythology. They looked at everything through their own very specific lens of Christianity. And so even Snorri Sturluson, who tried to stay true to the original thoughts and beliefs, his ideas are essentially flawed, even though they're the closest that we can get. But he was, a fellow who had his own filters in which he saw everything through. So the very Christian mindset, I feel that that's where that comes from, because everything in the Norse culture speaks to go out and make shit happen yourself. The onus is on you to create a difference. And so I feel like that's a misinterpretation. I feel like there are points in time that if we are following our path and we have found that are meant to affect us in a specific way. So I think that's as close as we can actually get to fate, and something that maybe is a predetermined checkpoint, if you will. As far as, fate being core to the belief system, I don't actually agree with that. I think that that's a misinterpretation, a misunderstanding, and perhaps someone else has a different idea of that. I forgot to turn off my notifications, the sound, so let's get rid of those so that we have no more interruptions. Excellent. So yes, that's where I stand on that belief. I cannot actually believe that it is that we are fated to be on a very specific path and that we have no choices. I've had this debate with many people about determinism, and I understand the viewpoint, but I don't agree with it. I don't know, Richard, what your thoughts are on that, but I would be very curious to hear that if you want to share any of those with us. So the runes are a means of checking in with the old gods, and specifically Odin. Odin brought the runes to us. It was a gift. If you read the mythology and listen to, the stories that are there, his main goal throughout is to gather wisdom and knowledge and to be able to be a strong magician. And magic is a way of affecting the universe. So to think that, we have not the ability to create our own course, I feel, is a very flawed belief. But as I said, it is very important to study the mythology, study the culture, really try to dive in and understand that space and the way that people of that time interacted with the world. And most of what we have, again, has been translated and placed through the lens of the folks who wrote it down. And those folks are Christian. Their belief system is markedly different than the Norse culture. So there is a lot that we don't understand. There is a lot that was lost. However, I believe that in doing this spiritual work and in actually communing with the spirits, with the gods who were present in that space, we can begin to bring forward and channel the information that is relevant to this system of spiritual work. What makes the runes unique is that they, as far as divination systems go, we can use any divination system in magic. However, the Norse runes are actually a system of a magical system. We can use it to affect our world and affect the energies that are around us, through the means of Galder, through means of bind runes, which is taking more than one rune in the system and combining the energies that you desire to create into one space and putting them together. I actually have a bind rune that is tattooed on my wrist. Well, below my wrist. It's upside down in the video, but that is an energy and a contract to myself that I was, that I am trying to bring into my life. And so that, and stay true to, it's the core of my ethics and being in person. And so I took the runes that embodied that and put them all together through many different journeys, magical quests, if you will, and brought them into one symbol. And that is what is called a bind rune. And the Helmabah, or the Aegis-Hjalmar, and the Vegvisir, those are examples of bind runes as well. They are created for a specific purpose to bring about the energies that are associated with that particular rune and manifest them in the physical. If you consider the idea, the definition of magic, that is magic. The definition, the classical one that I always return to is Aleister Crowley's definition of magic. It is a way of affecting your will in the universe and creating change. And I actually just had this discussion with one of my students recently, that will itself, as spoken about by Crowley, is the big W, not the little w. So it's the uppercase will. It is about finding your path, finding the direction that you are meant to travel in, and using that understanding. It goes above our base Malkuthian ideas and more, in essence, looks at the aspects of our path and our higher self and where we are trying to go within this lifetime, and using those energies to create decisions, to make change, and to affect our physical world, as well as the spiritual. First, we affect the the spiritual through the work, and then those energies translate into the physical. So it is a constant interplay of spirit and physical, and creating a harmony between those two spaces. So the runes are an excellent way of allowing us to be within that space and create that change within our worlds. So for those just tuning in, we are talking about runes. If you have any questions about them, feel free to type them into the comments, and I will do my best to address them. And so, looking at the Norse culture, the mindset is quite a bit different than the Western mindset. And so it is very important for us, even though there are several similarities, it is very important for us to study that culture and the mythology and know these spaces so that we can use them in our interpretation of and working with the runes. Taking something out of context, like the idea of karma, which is horribly misinterpreted in Western culture, taking those things out of their original space and understanding and mindset can lead to gross misunderstandings. And so I actually, in my courses, I do teach runes currently all my classes are in small groups due to COVID. I believe I stated that in our last conversation. We don't just study the runes, the symbols, the ideograms, and look at what they mean and consider the shape and where it derives from, but we also study the Poetic Eddas, the Havamal, and a lot of different Norse culture books that I have in a list, and go through all of those places and discuss and get to know the people and where they came from and what they were about. It is not possible to have a clear understanding and work with the runes otherwise. I 100% feel that is correct. I really enjoy being able to share that space and create those conversations and have that discourse with people, and have people create their own runes. That's one of the things that is really important for connecting to the energies that are embodied there, is being able to take something such as clay or stone or wood. Wood is my preferred space for creating runes because of the fact of the connection to Yggdrasil and the world tree and all of the realms. The realms are really important for readings as well. I've created a system of reading the runes that I thus far I feel is very unique, but inspired by my work with Odin. And I haven't seen it actually written down anywhere, and maybe at some point I'll get around to actually writing it down. But it is a system of casting the runes with a cloth that depicts the 9 realms, and then where the runes fall and how they fall affects the understanding of how they are meant to be brought forward into your life or understood in the context of your own world. Another aspect of needing to understand that culture is that when you are doing a reading with Norse runes and something comes up that you are supposed to see how it affects your life, the way that you carry that energy forward has to be understood through the context of the original culture from whence it came, because of the fact that this system did not leave those peoples and was not, widely adopted like the tarot or other systems. It is really, the energy is still rooted in that specific mindset, a mindset of action and self-creation, and that the onus is on us to put forth behaviors and actions to create the future that we desire. Now, I understand that that should be the way that we navigate through the world in every system. However, what I have come to find is that it is so much more an emphasis within the Norse culture. I feel woefully unprepared at this moment because I was hoping that there would be a lot more questions, and without the ability to convert this to podcast and also show images, I was hoping that we would have an opportunity to answer questions and look at those things as well. If anyone has anything to ask or add, I did have somebody who wanted to be part of the video. However, I don't typically bring anyone on the video unless there is, we've discussed that previously. I do love having guests on here, but I like to stay on topic, and I would love to know your interest in the subject and what you have to add. So if you wanted to go ahead and type that into the comment box, that would be fantastic. My notifications keep going off for some reason. It's funny how no one contacts me until I go live. I guess that puts it in their brains that I am available and ready. So yes, when it comes to working with the runes, there are a large number of books that have come out in recent years. We have the Viking show that is hugely popular and created a lot of interest in the world to understand better the people that are responsible for really bringing these ideas to the forefront. And so as a result, of course, there are a lot of people jumping on the proverbial bandwagon and wanting to speak about runes and write stories and get in on that space and sell their very I feel uneducated knowledge. They are not educated enough. So there's a lot of bullshit out there. There's a lot of really surface understanding of working with the runes. And so I think going to source materials, well, always going to source material is wonderful. It's the best way that we can get true knowledge and understanding. So the Havamal is part of it is fully dedicated to understanding the runes, and we have the Anglo-Saxon rune poem, and taking a look at the Icelandic rune poem, and taking a look at all of these different poems and writings in their translation, or if you can read the original language, and that's even better. But looking at these and meditating on it and working with those and trying to see how they translate to your daily life and where they show up in our world, and really getting into things that way before beginning to read a lot of the books that have been written probably in the past 5-10 years is far better. That way, when you read something, you can begin something that is newer. You can begin to see the lens or the filter through which the person writing it has affected the understanding of it. And again, we don't so much of the information and the way that this divination system was used has been lost. So there have actually been some really great authors that have done a lot of beautiful work on this topic, but they are difficult to find. And my favorite author is highly problematic. One of the fucked up things about working with the Norse culture is that it has been so appropriated and used by some really heinous characters in history. Many white supremacists have taken the Norse culture because of geographic placement and poor understanding of the peoples, and decided to use it as their very white, creepy system, and trying to exclude all people of color from this very important spiritual space. And that's one of the reasons that we have to be really careful when looking at the Norse system of spiritual system. So one of my favorite authors is actually, or it's hard for me to even voice that. Freya Oswin is a person who did some amazing work with the runes, and long before we had social media in the way that we do, and information on this topic was really difficult to get a hold of. I studied her book, Northern Magic and Mysteries, and found great value in it, and then come to find out, only in the last couple of years did I find out that she's a fucking racist bitch. So I don't believe in giving money to people who are fucked up on that level. It's just a mental illness, so that I don't believe in supporting in any way, shape, or form. And so it's troubling to me that the best piece of information that has been written thus far, and I've read tons of books on this topic and done so much study, the best modern piece was written by her. I hope that one day she is cured of her illness and has a moment of enlightenment, and then I can go back to supporting the work that she did do, which had no traces of this very fucked up mindset within it that I could find, or that I noticed when I read it like 5 times. So it would be wonderful if there were other people who in the future would create books that have such depth of understanding, that don't just go into the conversation of Norse runes as a divination system, but also speak to the magic that is in it. Nigel Pennick is another person that I really, really appreciate. His work in the occult and magical systems is brilliant. I pick up his books anytime I see them, and hope to have his entire collection at some point. However, he has done so much study throughout so many different cultures that when we look at his books on the runes, they are seen through the lens of those various different systems that he has encountered and studied at length, and are not based solely in Norse culture. So they're excellent resources for learning more, but not resources that would be good for the initial information gathering. Again, like I said, source materials are always going to be your best bet in this situation. Unlike the tarot, and the fact that it has traversed so many different cultures and has just been embedded within a broader sense, those symbolisms, those pieces of symbols, can I talk today? Not so much. That being embedded within world culture at large, we need to be able to go back to the source spaces and look at the Norse runes through that lens. So we hear about how Odin brought forth the runes. He sacrificed himself unto himself. The way that I interpret that is he went deep within himself, deep within the core of his spiritual being, in order to find the language of the of interaction between the gods, between the Ein Sof, or the divine self, and this world, and that language through which to communicate with and affect our world was found within these ideograms that are the runes themselves. often people speak about how that Odin sacrificed his eye, and we see it in images as an actual physical eye, but the way that I also have meditated on and interpreted that is that it was his third eye. It was that the eye of other sight, of being able to go beyond the physical senses, and he sacrificed that eye into the well of Mimir, the well of knowing, and brought forth wisdom and understanding to the people, so that we can elevate our consciousness and elevate our interaction with the energies of the universe. And that is what the runes are, is a way of interacting with the universe and affecting it and setting energies to right, and being able to find our higher will, our higher self, and follow the path that is, and that may be where the idea of predetermined space comes in, but following our path, the one that we agreed upon or set in motion before we were born into this body, and in this realm, and following that in order to become our higher self, to actually become the gods that we were meant to become. So that is my understanding of the runes and the way that I work with them. If there are no questions at this point, I do teach classes on this. It's a very in-depth study process. It takes several months. The fewest amount of months that we can do it, if you are really wanting to focus in and put in work, would be 3 months. And that includes learning Galder, which is singing and vibrating the runes within your body. We know that sound has frequency, and it affects our energy. And that's a very ancient idea that has been, continues to be brought forth. So I hear, Richard, any thoughts on the dangers of the uninitiated using the runes? So I would like to understand more what you mean by the uninitiated. I feel that it is folly for anyone who hasn't done the work and hasn't done the study and hasn't dedicated themselves to that. Oh, Richard, I love your questions. This is great. We have to sit down, maybe on here or in person and talk about this. So you are thinking of Egil's saga and the misuse of the runes. Yes, I do believe that it is folly for anyone who isn't, who hasn't done the work, who hasn't done the study, who hasn't connected with the energy of the Norse people, who doesn't have that basis behind them and hasn't connected to the runes in a very esoteric manner, and gone into the spirit realm and done and connected and created their runes and blooded them, and all the different steps that are prescribed. And so yes, I do believe that the uninitiated, and I put that in quotes, should not work with the runes in a magical format, and not even really in divination, because your understanding of divination with the runes is not going to be in the spirit of how they were intended. So I do believe that people who haven't done the work are essentially the uninitiated and should not work with the runes overall as a magical or divination system. And it shouldn't be until you have done this that you should work with them. Now, as far as initiation goes, we have so many gatekeepers that exist within the spiritual community that are the ones that want to tell you when you're fucking ready, and create these tiers and levels that they want for you to pass through in order to give you some certification and say, ah, you can do this now. And that's crap. That's absolute crap. I believe that once you've developed the relationship with the gods, because I truly do believe that they exist, and I've seen this in my own life. If you don't find, if you believe in the subconscious, you know, that you're accessing parts of your subconscious, that's fine too, but doesn't really fit in with my own cosmology and the paradigm from which I'm speaking. So, but the gods will tell you, Odin specifically will let you know when you are initiated. And again, that word is in quotes. So yeah, I do believe that if we do not understand something and we try to use it, then it's, you know, there can be a great deal of fuckery that can result. It's just like, you know, any power tool that you want to use, and you walk up to it and you haven't, you know, you don't even know how to turn it on. It's your first time checking it out, and you haven't read the manual or whatever. You're liable to, you know, hurt yourself or create a problem. If you step in a car and you've never actually had any driving lessons, you could kill someone or yourself, you know, someone else or yourself. So yes, I do believe that there is a base knowledge and understanding that should be developed and acquired before using the runes in this way. So Richard, you've said that the Vikings wrote graffiti and runes, so definitely a distinction between writing them versus magical intention. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. I also, to that end, and sort of on topic, or sort of to that, is I only work with the Elder Futhark as the magical system. And in divination, the younger Futhark created a lot of symbols and sounds that were meant to help them to connect with other spaces that they had interacted in, wasn't the core of what was essentially brought forth from Odin. So I definitely, and yes, there is, you know, we can write a story or write a poem or, you know, a shopping list, but when we create something for the purposes of magic, that is indeed very different. So yeah, I 100% agree with you, Richard. So magical, and as those of us who are practitioners know, intention is everything, yet we have to know what we're working with, who we're working with, in order to properly affect those energies. Because if you wouldn't make in science, you know, chemistry, you wouldn't put together some ingredients that you, or as an herbalist, I can speak very plainly to this, you know, we have to know a lot about the plants that we're working with, and in order to not have contraindications when we are creating a preparation for healing, whether, you know, and whatever level, because we can cause more problems and create more problems than we actually solve. So absolutely. So I hope that addresses your questions and comments completely. Let me know if there's anything else that you would like to discuss, or any other input that you have. I love that you are well versed in this information. That's beautiful. We should talk more about this. Maybe we'll do an other. Would you be interested? Just send me a DM if you would be interested in focusing on this topic in another tea and tarot. Then you could be a guest and share some of your insights as well. Do you work with the runes, Richard? And if so, do you use them magically as well as for a divination system? I do readings for people at various in various spaces in my private practice, as well as when I do festivals. And I a lot of times give people when they're asking about whether or not they should do tarot or runes. I always tell them that they have to have an understanding of the culture, an understanding of the peoples, and a resonance with that space before getting a reading with the runes. And some people just do it purely out of curiosity. And so I do a lot of history lessons and explaining when I'm, doing so you're an atheist but super interested in culture, religion, and modern practice. Beautiful. Well, your perspective is just as valued. So if you wanted to speak sometime, I value all perspectives and ideas and love the discourse. So, but I do a lot of explaining to people in my readings, so that they understand what is being conveyed, and hopefully I don't mislead anyone with information. I try to be super careful with my words, because words have so much power, and interpretation is everything. So anyway, I hope that this has been insightful, helpful, and created a space for us to talk about things. So you believe in the power of words and intent, both ancient and modern. Absolutely, absolutely. There are science-based articles that talk about how words and intent affect mindset, which it affects the way we perceive the world, which then affects how we interact with the world and how we affect it. So on a purely superficial level, although it doesn't feel superficial, but in the overall scheme of what I'm speaking about, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed my perspective. But yeah, we are beginning to understand more and more of how the way we speak, the way we, the way we affect our perspective also affects so much of what we experience. So thank you all for tuning in. I would love to speak with more of you about your ideas on this topic. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me. If anyone wants to be a guest on the show, feel free to send me a message and let me know what topic you're interested in speaking about and what your interest and background is in that. And it would be great to have guests with different and varying perspectives. I totally get off on that. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful evening.